Good day everyone, this is Amelia and today I'm going to show you how to crochet a granny square. You see two granny squares right here. This is a very classic crochet thing that we do. We see them in a lot of the vintage blankets and other projects, and they're not that hard, and they're a really great beginner way to even learn crochet. This can be your very first project. As a matter of fact, my first crochet project was a granny square. So I'm going to show you how to start in the middle and crochet the granny squares in rounds or layers, working outwards. They get bigger from the center as you go. As you can see in both of these, the centers are right here. And as you can perhaps see, these granny squares are just a little bit different. This one looks slightly larger. I'm going to explain why that is, because I do my granny squares a little bit differently than I think most people do. So I'm going to tell you why, and I'm going to show you what the difference is here. So for my granny squares here, I'm going to use this pink yarn. And this is a size H hook, and I'm going to slide these to the side for a moment. To make a granny square, we're going to start by making a slip knot. And then we're going to chain stitch about 8. There's some variation. You don't necessarily have to do 8, but I'm going to do 8. 7 and 8. And if you don't know how to do a chain stitch or a slip knot, you can refer to my other tutorials on that, or you can look them up of how to do those things. The other stitch you're going to need to know how to do is a double crochet for this granny square, and we're also going to use a slip stitch. But we have our 8 chains. We're going to use a slip stitch right now to connect the beginning and the end of our chain here, and we're going to make a circle. Okay, this is the center of our granny square, just like you see over here. Now we're going to start crocheting what is going to become a square. So I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to do 2 double crochet stitches. All right, now granny squares are all done in a pattern of 3. So our chain starts my set of 3 here. Okay, and each one of these blocks that you see that's kind of filled in where a granny square looks kind of checkered is a set of 3 stitches. Okay, now here is where these 2 squares are different. Okay, because like I said, a granny square is a pattern of 3. In this granny square, our chains in the middle of our solid portions are 3 stitches. So right here in our example, you'd go 1, 2, 3. So we have blocks of 3 solid, and then we do chains of 3. This granny square is different because in this middle, I have only chained 2. I want to make that difference right here because I tend to do my granny squares with only chains of 2 in the middle because I think it gives my granny squares a little bit more stability. My granny squares tend to be a little bit floppy if I do 3 chains in the middle of all the solid pieces, which is how I see it done a lot of times. So I just want to make that disclosure. As you can see, it doesn't make a huge difference, but it does make a difference over time. And so I just want to show you that right here, I'm going to only do 2 chains for the rest of my time, but a lot of people do 3, and that's easy to remember because it's a pattern of 3 stitches and then 3 chains. So enough about that for now. Once you have your 3 stitches here with our starting chain and our 2 double crochets, and then you have a chain of, as I'm doing, 2, we're going to do 3 more double crochets. And then we're going to make another corner with a chain space, and I'm going to crochet 2 again. Again, if that seems too tight to you, you can do 3, which is the common way to do it. And you can already see that this kind of looks like a corner. So already we're taking our circle that we made and we're turning it into a square. So a chain space in the middle, chain 2. Now we're going to go ahead and do 3 more double crochets, making our 3rd side. And now again, we're going to do a corner with a chain 2 because our very first row is basically just 4 very small sides and 4 corners. And then our last side is 3 more double crochets. All right, and I'm just going to ignore my tail here. Now to end, we're going to make one more corner, and we're going to slip stitch it into the beginning here. Oops. All right, now we have our first layer done. All right, so now I'm going to start the second layer to show you how we continue growing our granny square. We're going to start by creating an open space above our first solid bit. So to do that, I'm going to chain 5. This is going to be our starting chain over here, and it's going to go over to make our open space. Now I'm going to start in on this corner. We start this corner with 3 double crochets because we're going to increase our corner. We're going to increase each corner as we make our granny square bigger with each layer. And so to do that, we put 3 into our corner, and then we're going to chain. I'm chaining 2, and then we're going to put 3 more into the same corner here. So now you can see that this corner has now been increased. This is what you see from here in every single corner. And of course my examples only have 3 layers, but you would keep doing the exact same thing as you get bigger. So now we have a solid piece here. So we're going to do a chain space to create that checkerboard pattern. Now already we've come to our corner because our granny square is really small. So we're going to do that corner the same as we did the other one. 3 double crochets, chain space, and then 3 more double crochets into the same corner. There we go. You see? We just have to keep going around, do 2 more corners, and then we'll end right where we began right here. So another chain space. Another set of 3 in our corner. Okay. I'm going to finish this corner. One, 2, our chain space over here. Okay, I'm at my last corner. Now since I started here, I'm paying attention to how I started, and after I do my 3 double crochets here and my chain space, that's going to become the new corner bit, just like we have in all the other corners, and you can really see it coming into shape here. Now I'm going to do only 2 double crochet stitches here at the end, and I'm sure you can see why, because our starting chain that we did is going to count as our 3rd, so I'm going to slip stitch into the 2nd chain there, and there we go, my 2nd layer is done. This is the same technique, it's the same way you're going to continue to grow your granny square with as many layers as you need to do. The only difference is when you start, you are going to, or when you start these bigger layers, I should say, you're going to have some spaces now, starting with this one, where you are going to only be putting in 3 double crochets, and you're only increasing at the corners. So I'm just going to start this 3rd layer to show you that. I'm going to go ahead and chain 2 or 3. And then since I'm starting right here, and since this is already here, I'm going to only do 2 double crochets into this one. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3. But I don't do anything else here because it's on the side. And then I will do my chain space And now here I'm at a corner. And so I'm going to continue to increase that corner the same way that I did on the smaller rounds. 3 here, a chain space, and then 3 here. All right, so if I were to continue with this layer, I would have chain space, 3 double crochets, chain space, I'm doing chain 2, and then increasing at the corner. And I would continue that way all the way around, and after this corner, I would just chain 2 and slip stitch it in here. And that's all a granny square is. It's starting with a small circle, creating a square with corners and your double crochet stitches, and it's just increasing with the corners and paying attention to how it is when you start your layer, so that you can count your starting chain as a stitch, or just chain and slip stitch into something. You're just paying attention to where it is when you start, because now when I start this next row, I'll be starting with a open space, and so I'll just chain my 5 or maybe 6. You know, it depends on who's doing it, how the granny square is counted. But I hope this is helpful to you, even just as a quick example. I hope that this pattern of just increasing at the corners makes sense to you pretty quickly. And I hope that it makes sense to you that, again, I only chain 2 wherever I have chain spaces, but a lot of people chain 3. And in my granny squares, this is the difference that it makes. Chaining 3 just makes a looser, kind of floppier granny square, and then only chaining 2 makes it a little bit tighter, and I feel a little bit more structured. So I do it this way to help it keep its shape. So maybe try it both ways once the granny square starts to make sense to you, and see what you like best. And then once you get the hang of a classic granny square, feel free to check out the other types of square patterns that are out there, because there are some really, really gorgeous ones that look like flowers or are just solid with only the corners having holes. You can really, really find some creative stuff once you understand how to make a square, and you can learn a lot more about how to create beautiful designs with these. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for learning with me. I hope it's been very helpful for you, and you guys have a great day. Bye.